So, hi. Welcome to the second episode of Truth to Power Hour reboot, which is, I'm just going to call this one Voices in the Head. It makes sense.
Victims of brainwashing experiments that happened in Montreal are planning a class action lawsuit against the provincial and federal government and McGill University.
I'm Coyote.
These were innocent people that went in for mild depression, even if it was severe depression, postpartum, and they came out completely ravaged, and their life was ruined.
Sitting in my mailbox at this very moment is 40 pages of records for my mother's treatment under you and Cameron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Somebody
So
in our
just
group, Jeremy, just got records after trying for 21 years.
I have a great interview with a real live target with voices in his head. So this one's called Voices in Your Head because he's got voices in his head. My mom had voices in her head. I guess that was one of the things, but it was her mother's voice, right? So I'm just going to come out and say it. Those are satanic parlor tricks, okay? So if I can do anything in my life, it's to destroy that type of doctor for destroying lives, which is a great way to segue into my mental health segment of the show. So what I'm talking about now is mental illness and the system. So there's a push on, and there has been for the last little while, about destigmatizing mental illness. The government is doing that, right? And social engineering is pushed that way. Well, I'm all for keeping the stigma, because the one thing you do not want to do is go to the system for help, okay? And I mean any registered therapist, psychotherapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, any of them, any, even alternative practitioner, every single one of them. Alternative health and cleansing, fasting, and meditation and all that, and it's not all bad, right? So I'm not going to say that, but none of them have the truth, and they continue to keep a little bit of the truth out of your mind, so that you can continue to be a customer or a guinea pig. That's what it is. That's what they're doing, but they might not admit it, because they're in a better position than you on the other side of the couch, right? But who or the other side of the stethoscope or whatever they're wearing these days, those actor doctors. Anyway, I did get an appointment with a psychiatrist, but you don't get to see the psychiatrist right away. You go for an intake psychiatric nurse. And I went, and then I went through the whole intake procedure. And I told her everything, but I told her from a perspective of, do you know, Joseph Mengele was, operating in the system, and most of what you're basing your mental health ideas on are his ideas, and, how to keep people in these guinea pig states, and that you have no idea what you're doing, and just playing me like she thought she was playing me. And finally, at the end of this, where I divulge all this stuff, and I don't even know her last name, I pull out. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't want the psychiatrist. It just didn't make any sense. It was like, wow, I really had to give up all my rights just to see a psychiatrist. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Sign this. I didn't sign anything. Even the confidentiality agreement, I didn't. And then I wasn't going to sign the intake, and I wasn't going to let her submit it, but it was already done. Anyway, she was so out of her, authority, having none, just being like a cog in the system, playing some role, that she had to call her boss to see if it was okay if she could destroy the intake form, which had all my freaking, personal information on it. And she couldn't get through to him, so I picked it up off the desk, and we almost had a tussle. And there was some other people came in from the office with their weirdness, and while she was talking to the boss, after her second attempt to get through to him, she sat there and said she thinks she's being spied on by the CIA. That's what she said while she was simply asking about this other, to tear up the form. So obviously the whole time she thought I was crazy. Anyway, I finished that story. So she's like, okay, good news. I'll just tear it out. We don't have a shredder. And then she started to tear it up. And the pieces were flying everywhere. She was just a mess. And I'm like, okay, good, right? She's like, it was so funny. Anyway, that was the story. And she's like, I just want you to know, I took an oath not to do any harm. I'm saying, you do harm all the time. You just don't believe doing any harm, which is really the spell they're under. They're just freaking like poking and jabbing and keeping people off. And, anyway. That's that. Don't do it. You're better off to sit at a park bench like I'm doing right now and talk to a squirrel than you are to talk to a psychiatrist, psychologist, anybody, really. And that is what we call the Great Awakening, folks. Hey, a little shout out to our media sponsors. I'd like to thank V, the one and the only, creator at Truthtainment TV network on YouTube. He's also the host of the Red Pill Hardcore show on Republic Broadcasting Network. She was on a lot of drugs, so that alone. But those drugs were meant to keep her subdued and all her thought stuff down, because when she got off them, she started to talk like people are talking now with all this targeting. Okay, well, I read it. It's interesting because it does seem to provide a timeline that I couldn't quite piece together before. Okay? I mean, it raises a lot of questions. There's a whole the whole thing is personal, but, it confirms what I sensed all along growing up. And, it just leads me more and more to conclude that, yeah, the cult was definitely in her family. Okay, I've got it. I want to speak today about the what I call capitulating to crazy. All right, like that's not what this is, just in case you're wondering. Me going public is not a capitulation to crazy. In fact, it's the opposite. The second episode of Truth to Power Hour is mixing. So last was covering. These are satanic concepts. This is what Satan does. The mixing, or the covering, is the wings. All those wings in Egypt, that's Satan. Okay, that's covering. You don't need to see, we're going to create something illusory so you can participate in that. That's covering. That's a satanic concept. It's the wings, okay? So whenever you're like using those wings thinking they're representing, no, they don't. They represent Satan. Anyway, now it's mixing. So this is what another satanic concept is: mixing. Mixing DNA is what got us here, okay? Mixing. So any more mixing? Sex, right? Eating. Mixing. That's what purity is. It's just not introducing other things into the original form. And that goes for physical, mental, spiritual, all of it. And this is what Satanism does. It mixes more stuff up. That's what it is. So when you're talking about changing genders, you're mixing up genetics, which is now, or was eugenics, is now genetics, is about mixing. It's all mixing, cloning, mixing. And this interferes with purity, which is just there. The natural, the connection to God that is so under attack. Anyway, so that's what this concept of this show is: mixing. All right, so I'm anti-mixing, I'm anti-covering, and I'm anti-mixing. All right, so this is what I learned from my research. Yeah, studying Bible stuff. You have to be persistent, and you also have to be ready for it. ready to accept that reality that you've birthed into being. And I laid the groundwork, and I was ready for it, and the time was right. And after 5 years of online publicly seeking records, and 21 years since I wrote the first letter to the government, I got some records from my mother from the Allen Memorial. I mean, the people that are actually telling you the truth and advancing this, shift in reality are not getting the support, because I know them, and they just don't have the same flash that you're used to seeing that attracts you and makes you believe that you're, it's the packaging, the covering. So I'm trying to blow that up, so you get the like, oh, okay, right, yeah. Addiction. My mother was addicted to those drugs. She was also, she was addicted to mind-altering drugs, and she was literally trapped in another dimension. And her family wanted her there. Oh, they put her there. The doctors put her there. Everybody put her there. Yeah, she was just strangulated. And then I have all issues about strangling. And then the silence program. Yeah, and then you're supposed to wear a cover. No, I'm not doing it. Right? I've worked really hard to become articulate on this subject. I've always had articulation because my father was an English teacher and I was raised that way, and I skipped grade 4 and I was very smart and I can write very well, as you probably know if you've read my blog. Yeah, this whole invitation for nut jobs to have them end up trying to handle me. Yeah, so back to this capitulating to crazy, that's not what I'm doing. I talk to a lot of people and a lot of targets, and I've had a lot of people come at me over the years since I went public, especially since, I'm on my crusade to launch Alternation and, rout out the cult. I'm up for it. So it's I have actually recognized that I guess I do have alters and different identities. Some of it is natural, like character, and being able to have a more flexible character than most people, and I always have. But what's that compared to an alter? And I realized that I have a couple of memories of when I've switched. And I remember, I'm going to tell you about a time that I remember switching. I was having some drinks outside with a friend of mine in the afternoon in the countryside. Everything was great. And I just folded. I lost consciousness. I did. And there was a moment where I went out. And I remember the feeling. It was like I was just, and I couldn't function anymore. And I was physically taken out, incapacitated for a second or two or a bit. And it was enough of a thing where my friend said, what happened? What happened? Because I was powered down. And it's not a good feeling, because you're sinking, and it's and also it's embarrassing. So, but I remember while it was happening, and when I came out of it, that I'd had it before. So that's often what happens in dreams. When you're remembering a dream, you remember all the other dreams that are coming attached to it. So, but otherwise you wouldn't. And those are vibrations and frequencies. So what V2K is actually the weaponization of satanic parlor tricks. Do you think putting a voice in someone's head is not written down in a how-to manual of some satanic book somewhere? It is. I guarantee you that. Okay? So all this stuff stems from the cult. And when people in targeted positions, they still don't want to go to talk about the cult. They just don't want to talk about the devil or God, because it's the same thing, because they think that is going to interfere in their hardcore analytical deductions and get to the bottom of it. No, you actually need to include that, or you will never get to the bottom of it or stop it. Okay, hi. It's MK Ultra Girl, and I'm here with Sean, who is a guest of the show, and he's a targeted individual, and I'm going to ask him some questions about his particular form of targeting. He's had, he knows who his perp is. Anyway, welcome to the show, Sean. Yeah, and thanks for agreeing to be on the show. So
problem.
yeah, I've listened to what you've said a lot, and because your mom was also targeted, she had voices in the head, and you have a voice in the head. Now you know who this voice is, and he knows you know, and you know there's nothing.
No secrets there.
Yeah, no.
His girlfriend came over to
You
me.
met the guy
I met the
at
guy.
a bar.
Yeah, he's the
about
D-
20
he's a-
years ago.
He was a DJ at the
He's
bar.
a
Yeah.
DJ at the bar.
Yeah.
You met this guy.
Yeah, and all of a sudden his girlfriend comes over and asks me to have one fun night together, and we won't tell anybody. And I said no, because my girlfriend was at home, and I'm just not that way. Well, of course he gets wind of it or whatever, and I find out, and he keeps bugging me and telling me that I had sex with his girlfriend for weeks, months. He did this every single night every single time I seen him. And then I broke up with my girlfriend, and I was at the bar and he was yelling at her, and they broke up, and he's still blaming me and everything. So, and she was still hanging out with me. So we went home. Don't remember the night whatsoever.
Okay. So yeah. So okay. So this is the formula for all MK Ultra, trauma-based mind control, Satanism, all of it. It's demonology. It's you're going to be drugged. You're going to be tortured, so that you need to disassociate, and so your old personality, the one you liked or the one you knew, goes to sleep, and then they program you or insert demons or whatever they're doing, because it's all connected. We might as well just call it all the same thing. And then you wake up and you don't know what happened, and you're like, what was that? And then more of this stuff keeps happening, and you're like, what? Carry on with that.
And
How do we
after
get
that,
to the date we're at now?
After that, he got me started, like you said, drugged. I got me started on crystal meth.
Yeah.
Bingo. Anyways, did that for a while. And of course, once I got started on it, then his next girlfriend, that he had a child with, once they broke up, and she got pregnant, and then he broke her ribs, from what I've been told. Probably did, knowing him. Broke her ribs, and probably didn't want the kid for some reason. But anyways, she showed up after a while, and she said, can I get some stuff off you if I can't get anything? So that brought her to me. So he kind of pushed her towards me, and I went out with her for 6 years, and I took care of the son and everything. He's my stepson.
His son.
His son. Yep.
You actually raised his son.
Yes.
Wow. So there's a lot of connections here.
Yeah. And anyway, I took care of his son, and then at the end of I didn't know it was getting to the end of the relationship, but it was. In the relationship, I thought there was something going on behind my back. Got a little bit, something weird going on. So I left a voice recorder out in my house. Came home, took a couple of days to listen to it. Didn't have time, but finally I put it on, and I got an earful. It sounded someone was being raped in my house.
When you weren't there.
When I wasn't there.
Okay.
I was at work.
Yeah.
There was something going on there, and I listened to it for a couple of seconds, couldn't really take it, so I kind of turned it off. Anyways, I left it a few days. All of a sudden, she wouldn't come back to talk to me about anything. I said, there's some weird things on this recording I'd like to talk to you about. And nope, not coming back. Never coming back to my house again. Well, okay. So now my only way to find out what's happened here is to go through this recording. And I went back to the recording, and it was different.
Wow.
So labeled the same thing, but the recording missing. I mean, I find out he's on the second floor of my condo, and I live on the third.
Oh.
So, I mean, of course he doesn't, long story, but he doesn't own the house, but he's probably staying with one of his friends. His name's on nothing, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
kind of a hidden guy. So, but find out, I saw him.
Do you think he was there just because you were there?
He was there the whole time. Basically, you'll find out later that he runs a sex cult.
Okay.
So he was,
People told you that.
Well,
Or you pieced it together.
kind of pieced it together.
Yeah.
When I hear what's going on, and I hear what's the next recording that they left me is kind of an act and telling me things, but inadvertently, so I can't prove anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I've heard
talking
this
about.
from another target before,
So-
that her husband was running a prostitution sex cult right out of her house
Yep, didn't even know
while
it.
she was at work.
Yep,
Yeah.
this is while I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I just happened to catch it, and this is the way they wanted to deal with it. So all of a sudden, I listened to all these files, and if you listen in the background, there's like rape sounds in the background, and there's things going backwards and forwards. It tries to mix it all up so you're all confused and you don't know what's going on and everything. And then, you know, after that, I just had a fight with that for a while, obviously, because I wanted to know some answers, and I didn't know anything. And then they turned everything around on her family, saying that I'm crazy and I hear things, and made it so I could never see the son again. So I lost the son, I lost the girlfriend, not knowing what's going on. And then all of a sudden, my best friend, that was my ex-girlfriend from before, something happened to her too. Don't know what happened to her, never will probably.
Yeah.
If knowing him, probably did the same thing with her. So basically, from what I got out of it is he this is rough, but he like gang rapes people with like 5 or 6 guys and humiliates the women so they won't talk, and then he blackmails them with videotapes of them also so they won't talk.
Yeah.
So then, you know, they turn into like they start drinking and doing drugs and whatever, and then they mess up their own lives, and it's whatever, it's their fault.
In
But anyway,
his eyes.
in his eyes, it's their
Yeah.
fault. So he finds it funny.
Typical sociopath.
Yeah.
It's your fault for
Yep. So I was messed up.
letting me screw you up.
I was messed off. I was paranoid. I thought everybody was out to get me from all the voices that he had put in my head and told me that everybody was out to get me, and I didn't know what to believe, and I didn't know what was going on. Freaked me right out. Of course, I go to the doctor. They tell me it's because of the drugs he got me on.
Right.
And-
Well, people
but-
do say they open you up to demons, and
Yeah.
they do, but that's if you don't know how to navigate the planes,
Yeah.
because that's what they do, is open you up to other planes. Yeah.
So like I'm saying, it's kind of his,
Most people
it's kind of
don't.
his like a cover up for me being with voices in my head. He's got me started on the crystal meth. Now I get blamed for it. It's my fault again.
Yeah.
Everything's
Sure,
somebody
no
else's
one's gonna
fault.
believe a drug addict.
No, nobody's gonna
Yeah,
believe the
you're
guy.
at the
So
bottom
anyway,
of the socioeconomic
so I quit
everything.
drugs.
Yeah.
I went and got my brain scan done. Down the States. You know, they couldn't find out where the voices were coming from. It's medically not there.
Yeah.
They pumped me full of pills and stuff. Nothing worked. Absolutely no medications worked at all.
I mean, you still heard the voices,
Still heard the voices.
even with the meds.
All meds.
Okay.
Tried about the first time. That was 13 years ago. That was
Did they suggest shock treatment?
my doctor this time was thinking about it, but he says it doesn't seem to be a logical thing for this.
For anything, in my opinion, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me because that's what they suggest. Oh,
Okay.
voices, great. Yeah.
But and then you know, after 2, 3, 4 years of basically sitting in a corner, scared. I was scared to be by myself.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let my mom leave the house without me. I was terrified. It was hard for me to walk to the corner store, which is about 2 blocks away, to get a pack of cigarettes.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was my breakthrough. Doing that once, and then okay, I can do it, kind of thing. And you have to keep now. I had to start living a life over. Now my voice has kind of stopped. I had to start pushing myself to do everything, fighting to do everything, getting used to it again, and starting my whole life over, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had to get going back to work. I had to, it was terrible. So anyways, 8 years later, Mom passed away from cancer. Don't want to get into that one too far, but and 4 or 5 months later, my new girlfriend showed up. Everything was fine. 2 months in, I start getting texts that were very strange, like she'd start a fight at my house and tell me to take her home at 2:30 in the morning, because I was snoring. Don't tell me to go in the other room. Take me home. So I take her home, and all of a sudden I get a text back that says, don't think too far into this or anything. And then the next text would be, it's supposed to be for somebody else. It said, look opportunity. And I'm like, what? And then, and then I'm like, he goes, oh, I leaned on my phone. I don't know where that came from. Well, okay, we'll leave it at that. So I questioned that, of course, got in a big argument, and of course she had her excuses. I was I was still paying for my mom and stuff. So, everything was, okay, well, let this go. Let it go. 2 years later, 2 years later, STD shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to know.
That's a good way to know something's going on.
Yeah.
But then again, you go ask things and blah, 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 blah. Things kind of go around. About a year and a half later, got in a fight again. One day she wanted to stay home a couple nights. So, okay, we were broken up at the time, but we're still working things out. And, got caught going in the house with her friend by her family. And, all of a sudden questions started. I started getting texts like I was saying, I need the truth of what's going on. And she said, I can't tell you the truth. And then I'm like, okay. And then, why can't you tell me the truth? And then she starts saying something about 5 guys, which relates to the first one.
Right.
And then it's and then I start talking to her, a family member of hers, and we're trying to figure out what went on that night. And so she's talking to her too. She's like, why don't you just tell them the truth? And she said, well, the truth is too embarrassing. I have all these texts and everything, of course. It just goes on and on and on and on. She lied about where she was. She said she was at some guy's house and she can get me cameras and stuff, pictures on the camera to show she was there. Well, I said, okay, get me the pictures. Well, never came up. Everything's a big lie.
Is she the one that told you that you were in a cult?
Yes, that's how we finally broke up, because she all of a sudden after that incident that she went out and didn't know what's going on, we were actually together again, because all of a sudden my voices started again, which of course the doctors now say it's because of stress. Anyways, so that went on. And then all of a sudden he starts telling me all these stories in my head about everything that's going on, and everything fit, but I wouldn't believe it. I was like, no, I don't believe it. And then he's telling me he's part of a cult, he's part of a sex cult, and he does this, that, and then he started telling me about raping women, and there's something with child porn and everything.
So he's telling you all this.
He tells me everything dead out.
In your head.
Yeah, dead out straight, because I can't prove anything.
Right. To drive you crazy and to, trigger you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is how he does it. He tells me everything that he's done. So basically he wants to play a big game of me wasting my time fighting him while he's in my head. And then he says he'll go away if I leave him alone, which we know he won't, because he came back again the last time.
Well, what were you doing to him?
Nothing.
Never. Right.
Never.
Nothing. Yeah, right.
Never did anything wrong. But he tries to blame me for everything, of course. And there's the point I was going to hit on there. But then, he's telling me he's a cult and everything, and I'm believing my girlfriend at the time. I'm saying, nope, I'm standing up for her. She wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't. And then all of a sudden she went and phoned my aunt and said, Sean's in a cult.
Wow.
Reason being, let me clarify that. Reason being, it's because I started getting help from a lady on Vancouver Island that deals. She's a mental health counselor.
Yeah.
Plus, she deals with targeted individuals.
Okay.
So I started talking to her.
Yeah.
And I started having conference calls once a week. And I was having my conference calls. Well, I guess somebody didn't like her being there while I was learning about what's going on and all this stuff. So his way of, because he knew right when she said I was in a cult, I would know what's going on, and that was it. Out the door. Like,
okay.
I was at a friend's house and I was like, I gotta go home for a few minutes. So out the door. Like I say, and I want to stress this, not the girl's fault.
So he infiltrates their lives, gets them involved in some stuff with the same old cult MO, drugging,
Alcohol,
sex, drugs, and blackmail. And God knows what other rituals. That's what we have to know. I have to insert there or assume that this is happening, and that these types of rituals that have been recounted again and again by many survivors, targeted individuals, people that have encountered the cult in many different facets, connected to many different fronts, over the last like 50 years. Okay, so that all this testimony is coming out. This is just your particular cult in your particular life in your particular neighborhood, but what we're seeing is this guy has absolutely infected your whole life, and basically every little facet of it has been manipulated and controlled, or attempted to be controlled by this guy. And certainly anything bad that's happened has led back to him, and doesn't allow, because of all this bad happening, there's not any chance for good happening, right?
Yep.
So so what do you make of this, that you're in a cult thing? I mean, you see, if
Well,
you didn't know you're in a cult,
the funny part
and
is
she's telling you you're in a cult, what's that all
the
about?
funny part
and
is
they're
that-
all in a cult, so
Yeah, well, they're trying to tell me I'm in it and I'm part of it,
Yeah.
and all this stuff to make me think there's no way out, and blah 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 blah. But it's funny because my first relationship that I had with the first girl, I started listening to a music group, and she tried to tell me that I was in a cult then too.
yeah, wow, right?
So he repeats this exact same routine again to make it look like it's schizophrenia or psychosis.
But right, but I mean, essentially, we could have been saying, what's he doing now? What's going on?
He's not doing too much right now. I just hearing like yells and screams and
Okay,
laughing,
okay, right,
things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not getting too much talking.
yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of died down in that sense. It's not so.
Well, because we're doing the talking, and he's doing the listening, and he's doing the reacting. He's on the defensive. That's what's happening, because we're offending, right?
Yeah. No, it's he's it's not. I'm not as distracted as I usually am.
Right.
So no, it's good. I've had a good day.
He's not acting alone. This is a satanic cult. There are satanic cults everywhere, which is one of my great campaigns, is to rout out the cult in our, not just like on the internet, or getting Trump to do it, or expecting somebody else to do it. We got to do it ourselves within our communities, and everywhere, friends everywhere, because that's where it is. So this guy obviously has a cult. He's got a network. They're almost always pedophiles, child porn traffickers, and any other dirty thing, guns.
Anything they can sell on the dark web,
drugs.
they'll sell it.
Yeah. Even if they don't even use the dark web, it would be just the underground networks. And there's enough dirty cult members within the networks that are supposed to bust these things up, like the police and the judges, that they can get cover. But that's ending, and that will end, because we're routing out the cult, and this campaign is now going viral. And it's not just me, it's the Great Awakening, right? So so people like this guy are getting scared, but this has never happened before in a collective way, in the collective consciousness, because because everyone wanted to hide behind the cover of that doesn't happen to me. Oh, you're crazy. I'm not. But that's over. We're not.
Secrecy is number one.
Right. Yeah. We're not playing that game anymore.
No.
That is not reality, and it never was. So thanks, Sean, for being on my show and this little telling me about your story. Where do you see this going now? Where do you see yourself in 6 months, or where do you want to be with this guy, and or without this guy, or whatever? Where do you see? What do you want? What are you projecting?
That one I don't. I'm kind of living a day by day right now with this going on. So that's hard to answer. I mean, everything's getting better every day. It seems to be getting better and better. Some days get worse. I'll do things and say things that he doesn't like, and he gets mad. He'll show himself around my shop sometimes.
Oh, physically?
Yeah.
In the flesh?
Yes. I've seen him at the mall, at the shop.
But you don't know where he lives right now?
No. I've seen him at a house, but again, it won't be his house.
Okay.
There's more detail to that, but we'll get into that in a bigger
And he
interview.
has told you in the voices that he is a member of Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Hells Angels, any other cult? You Roman Catholic? No, I'm just kidding.
No. No. He's told me he's part of the government. He's part of the police.
Okay.
He, anything
See.
with overpowering to try and intimidate me, he will try.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So, I mean, it really is all one and the same. All these cults are one and the same. And within the cults, they always have to have people that know nothing about cult activity to keep the front up, right? So it's not like all Freemasons are bad. It's not all Roman Catholics are bad. Not all police are bad. That's the way it is. So don't get caught on that, that false dichotomy of the argument. We're talking here. The cult is secret. They're hidden within everything. So I just want to make that clear. But all those things are the same thing. The dark side of it, that's why I just call it the cult now, right? Yep. The cult. It's the same. The cult in the Freemasons, the cult in the Hells Angels, the cult in the Illuminati, except I don't think there's any good Illuminati. I mean, the whole thing seems to, and then the cult within, the police and the judges, and the CPS and everything. So it's not that it's, and what the Great Awakening is the shearing of the cult, routing it out at this time.
His goal seems to be he tried to get me to come to him, and basically he told me he wanted to rape me, with some kind of a sex machine, he told me. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get right down that. But anyway, so he wanted me to go to him, so now he's going to humiliate me and blackmail me to keep my mouth shut. I didn't go that way.
Yeah, these things aren't working anymore.
So
right?
he wanted to, and then destroy my life that way, use me to do things, and then destroy me that way.
On the outer world of being on his side, but it's not anymore.
Yeah. So
not
then
with the Great Awakening.
and now his routine is to distract me and everything. He says he basically he tries to distract me at work so I can't work. He's things are happening that slowly but surely all will go downhill and be nothing left. So my best result would be to go to him, he says, and be.
So it's just mind manipulation. It's just like intimidation. The same old thing. Okay.
So he's like, well, if you don't come to me, I will destroy your life. But if you do come to me, I'll destroy your life too.
Yeah.
So I'll take my route and I'll try the good way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll take door number 3. Yeah. Right?
I'll take door number 3 and fight back.
Yeah, fight back. Okay, thank you very much, Sean. It was wonderful having you on the show. And
you're welcome.
Thank you for sharing your story, and I hope our listeners are getting something out of it. I'm sure they are. And and also, I'm sure that your buddy there is kind of like, definitely that's a few rocks to his.
I'll add one more thing in.
To his.
I'll add one more thing in at the beginning when I first met them all at the bar. Well, I first met him at the bar and everything. Of course, there was a few other people, but he's the main guy, and they nicknamed me Munster, as in Munson me. So they were telling me right there that they wanted to Munson me and wreck my life. But I didn't know it at the time. I didn't. Munster, what's that?
I don't know what Munson means.
Munson is destroy your life in every aspect of every way.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they want to Munson me.
They told you right then and there.
They called me Munster.
Yeah,
that was my nickname,
so
and I didn't know,
like
and I didn't know what it meant at the time either.
Yeah.
So
they tell you exactly.
They tell you everything straight to your face.
It's not really a mystery. Yeah.
No, it's not a mystery. Like I could go on for hours about things they told me.
Yeah. But it's hard when in these situations 20 years ago and no context at all publicly.
No, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it takes a long time to piece it together. But now we're piecing it together, and we're accelerating the reversal program.
Yep.
Yeah, which is routing out the cult, which is repenting, which is returning to the original form, our pure selves, right? Instead of having to deal with these demonic, weaponized demons that are coming through many different ways. So I forgot to include the entertainment section of the Truth to Power Hour. So this week, it's going to be Killing Eve. Be Villanelle, the villain L. Did you get it? Villanelle L. There's another L reference. So L is Elohim, who are the gods, the little good G gods, the Anunnaki, the same thing, one and the same, the fallen. Okay, they're the L. It's not the good God. that you think or pray to. It's them. That's out. So this is Villain L. And I found myself modeling her behavior in a empathic way. I mean, not the murder part, but all her mannerisms and little nuances. It was bizarre. So, that leads me to question, if at any time I was one of these, like, sleeper assassins. I know that's like, why you can't. I'm not now. I get it. I think what I did was I jumped into, this reality, so without any, support, so that I could live like this hobo person to get this message out. If I was an assassin when I was 6 years old, like, wow. I'm more inclined to remember, like, ancient memories, I think, of past lives than I'm inclined to remember what happened. So, what can you do when you were one of these kids? It's possible to repent. I've repented. I repented before I was born, but apparently I was captured and programmed and altered and then discarded, or I chose this. Because I'm sure I could have lived in a protected, well-funded, alternate timeline. It's really not. It's a breakaway civilization. That's going on, and that's what the SSP survivors are telling you, because they remember it too. But it's still going on, and it is another timeline, and it is a breakaway civilization. So I could have been there, but for some reason I didn't. So I don't know what to say, but I'm long stitching it, and it's all about discovery and publicly revealing all this stuff. So it's my show. I'm gonna say it.